Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What the hell are they? I hear you cry. Well, my friend Polly and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So, if you're ready, here we go.
Today, Monday Motivation, we are talking about, I kind of came up with this one. It's all about goals. And you thought we talked about this at the beginning of the
I
year. And
did.
I did look back and I don't think we have. Maybe we've obviously talked about goals probably in some other form. But the reason why this came up for me, for today is because of the Olympics. I don't know about you. I have loved watching the Olympics, and I just love the Olympics. I find it so inspiring watching these athletes at the pinnacle of their sport performing and what it takes for these athletes to get where they are. And there was one particular athlete I have to mention. So I don't know if you know, but my eldest son, Felix, for many years, from the age of about, I don't know, 8 to 16, really to the lockdown, to COVID, he did an awful lot of climbing. He was naturally very good. He competed a lot.
Oh, wow.
He ended up in the GB
Oh,
team and the
wow.
squad. But all of regionally, so Toby Roberts, who won the gold this Olympics, my Felix basically competed against him for years and years and years.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he was his nemesis. Toby was Felix's nemesis because more often than not, Toby was first and Felix was second. There was once or
Wow.
twice Felix beat him. And so obviously, and then Felix got to 16 and just decided, you had to make a decision, right? Is this the path I want to go
Oh
down or not?
gosh.
And so he suddenly was discovering going out, friends, he was like, no, I love climbing, but I don't want to take it down that road, which I was quite relieved about, if I must be honest, because it's
Really?
quite full on. And we're not climbers. Giles and I were just following him and supporting him. Anyway, Toby Roberts, I remember that, who recently won gold in the climbing for men's climbing. I remember having a conversation with him one weekend when we were on one of these training sessions for the GP team. I said, Toby, where do you want to take all of this? Because he was just so insanely focused and so good. And he said to me, and because the Olympics at that point, I don't think it was even in the Olympics, but he said to me, I want to be world champion and I know I'm going to be world champion.
Wow.
And he knew from that young age, and I reckon he was probably about 12 then. He knew, maybe it was younger, that's exactly what he wanted to do. And you could see his grit and his determination whenever he was up on a wall. He would never let go. He would literally just hold on for his dear life. And whereas my Felix, a lot of the other kids, they didn't have that. And it was so funny. I remember one weekend with Felix's coach, and he pointed out two kids. He pointed out Toby and he pointed out Hamish MacArthur, who was the other mad person in the finals of the Olympics for the men's climbing. And he said to me, watch those two kids because they want it, because they're not cutting they're not cutting any corners like all the other kids are doing, like taking the shortcuts. They want it more than anybody else. And it was just so fascinating for me, this watching them. They both performed so well, and they've just set that as their goal, and they did it, and Toby got gold. So for me, it was just and for watching it with Felix, it was just such an amazing experience. And it just highlighted to me that when you want something so much and you just know that is your North Star, that is your goal. And Toby's dad has basically coached him. They work together. It's been like a plan since 2012, and he's done everything it's taken, ticked off all the milestones, and then he's got to his goal. That I think we can all just take something from that. It's just, in terms of he worked so damn hard, but he got there, and yeah, it's so inspiring.
How completely incredible. I'm going to have to go and watch it on catch up because unlike you, I literally, well, basically I didn't watch any of the Olympics, and it's not because I don't think it's amazing, it's just because I never watch sport. I just don't. But my mum's been going on and on about it because she's been glued to it. And so about 2 nights ago, it was about 9 o'clock, and I was like, and I'd been working, I was just like, do you know what, I just need to sit down and watch something. And I went onto BBC iPlayer and I watched about half an hour of the just like the recap of that day. And I was kind of like flicking through, and I saw a little bit of diving, which was, do you know one thing about this? It was going off on a complete tangent off goals and talking about diving, but I literally, it was the first of the Olympics I'd watched, and I was watching these dives, and the commentator kept saying, "Well, that was rubbish," or he was being quite harsh, and I was like, "What are you? What?" This some guy does the most incredible dive, and then anyway, so I did actually watch them, and I saw a little bit of one of the girls climbing. Anyway, so literally the only Olympics I've watched is half an hour of kind of bits and bobs, but this is making me want to go and watch that by Toby, because I love this conversation about goals so much, because it is so true that when you make a decision that you are going to do something and you keep your focus on that thing that you want and you believe in your heart that you can do it, you can make it happen. And I don't think enough of us really believe that to be the truth, but I think it is. And the thing about goals is they're so incredibly important for so many reasons, because I just feel like if we don't have goals, we are drifting through our lives. We are just drifting. We need goals to feel like we have direction and to feel like we have purpose. And those two things, having some kind of direction in your life and having some kind of a purpose in your life, they're so important for the way that we feel about ourselves, and just, for our self-confidence, and just giving us that sense that we're working towards something. And I think it's really, really, really important that we are working towards something. And, it doesn't have to be anything major. It doesn't have to be something like you want to win an Olympic gold medal, but we all need something little that we're working to, even if it is something just like, well, this time next year, I am going to go to India, or, this year I am going to, I don't know, I can't even think of anything now. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to, like I'm really doubling down on my strength training at the moment. So, this time next year, I want to see a difference in my body. I want it to be more toned. I want it, I want to see a bit more muscle in a year. And it's just, it gives us something to focus on, which is so important. And the thing about goals, I think we sometimes look at them as this huge, huge thing that seems unattainable. And if Toby, what's his surname?
Toby Roberts.
If Toby Roberts had looked at winning the Olympic gold in 2012 and thought, well, that's just, how ridiculous for me to even think that that's something I can do. But instead, he probably just broke it down into the steps, little baby steps. And that is the key, I think, when it comes to goals, is it's breaking things down. And rather than, obviously keep that vision at the front of mind, but then just break it down. And it's incredible what you can do in your life if you just do one little thing every day. And and I think when it comes to any kind of achievement or getting somewhere that you want to get to, so much of it comes down to the really unglamorous but really consistent little steps that we're doing when nobody is watching, that we're doing when we really don't feel like doing. And I think doing them, and the difference is the people who get where they want to get is they are willing to do those boring, unglamorous, often really, difficult steps. But ultimately, when we are consistent in taking those baby steps, that is when we start making real progress. And the thing is, if you just do the thing, a year goes by so incredibly quickly. And I've said this so many times on this, I've said it on the podcast, but the time is going to pass anyway. So why not set yourself a goal and just take those little steps. And it doesn't have to take up that much time. It could be half an hour a day, or it could be 15 minutes 5 times a week. But yeah, goals are so important,
Yeah.
you know?
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you just have to think about this time next year, and if you say to yourself this time next year, oh, it's so annoying, I really wanted to have done X, Y, or Z, and I could, if I had been a bit more consistent, I could have perhaps got there.
Yeah.
And that is like the worst feeling, when you feel like you could have done something, but you just didn't take those small, consistent practices. Actually, one girl from my membership, Just Breathe, who she's been breathing now with me, amazing Anna, if you're watching, she's just so brilliant. She's been she started off kind of quite sporadically turning up to sessions. We do 3 sessions a week, live sessions. But in the last 6 months, she has literally been pretty much 3 times a week to the live sessions. And then she says she does the recordings 2 other days a week. So she's kind of doing the breathwork practices 5 days a week. And she said for the first 3 to 6 months, there wasn't, she was doing them. They made her feel good afterwards. It was all, she felt something from it, but she was a bit like, okay, I'm not sure if this is having a massive impact on my life. And then she said, literally 6 months into it, having done the practice again and again and again, that suddenly she noticed it had been it's a sort of game changer in terms of how she shows up in her everyday life, how she's got so much more space to think, to feel, to react to things, how much calmer she is, how much more present she is. And it was all those consistent actions, which, okay, they feel nice and it feels good in the moment, and yes, you are getting some benefits, but in terms of the overall impact that all of those small steps are making, actually it can take a bit of time to build up and compound, so that you get these really bigger effects after a while. And yeah, it's like so, and then that drives you on to go, my God, this is really working.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm just going to keep going, because I can feel these benefits are just impacting every part of my life. And that's the thing, with goals. That's why it's so important to have that goal, because initially, if you're taking those small, tiny steps, you're not seeing the progress perhaps as much as you want to be doing it. So you kind of go, oh, well, it's not working, I'm going to give up. I'm never going to get there. But actually, you've just got to stick with it. Really keep that goal in mind, that focus of how do you want to feel? What are the results you want to get? And really believe in that. And then they will come. They do come. So yeah, and that's why things like, accountability groups, all of those sorts of things are so helpful, because they help us stick with it. Because how many times do you start something and then go, oh God, I it's not working, I'm giving up. But now I know, actually, I want that goal. And that's why they say it's very important, if you want to, for example, turn up in your life and feel like you are more present, you are calmer, write it down and state it. I want to feel like this. And maybe you don't feel like this now, but it's absolutely possible for it to be your go-to state. But you've got to do something in the process to fill that gap to get there.
Completely. 2 things, Polly. One thing is that I just wanted to say that, some things take time. So I really think there's a big element of patience when it comes to goals. And I think, the world that we live in now, we're so used to kind of having what we want when we want it. We can order something for the, next day's delivery. By the way, my stomach is rumbling so loudly, and I'm using a microphone. I'm really worried that this is actually going to come out on the recording. Like I haven't had my breakfast yet. It's literally the loudest rumbling I've ever heard.
Oh, I haven't heard it.
So sorry if anyone can hear that. But no, I think we've got to learn to be patient, because, I so often use the example of the podcast, but I've been doing my podcast now for 2.5 years, and I believe that it's gonna go places, and I have absolute faith in it. But it's very, very slow progress. You know, I've only just very recently got a sponsor, and you know, it's this is a classic example of something that I have a vision for it. I have a vision for where I want it to go, and it's just keeping consistent with just showing up and putting it out every single week. And you know what? There are some weeks where I think, what the F am I doing? This is so hard. It never stops. It is relentless. It literally, there is no break. It just is on and on and on and on and on. And some days I think, oh, do you know what? Maybe I just won't do an episode this week, or maybe I just won't do the minisode. But then I'm like, no, because my vision of where it's going and what I want for it is so clear that it keeps me going. But it does require a lot of patience. And I remember in the beginning, it was so funny. I remember when I first started the podcast, a few people said to me after about 2 months, so are you making any money? Are you making any money yet? And I was like, no. Why would I be making money after 2 months of a podcast? I'm not Joe Rogan or Stephen Bartlett. And I just think sometimes we expect things to happen so much quicker than they actually do. And you know, you look at anyone, like anyone who is successful, anyone who has built anything, anyone who's had a big goal, you know, what we see is when they've kind of got there. But what we forget is how long it has taken them to get there. You know, take Joe Rogan. He's been doing a podcast for years, you know, years.
Yeah.
It takes time. So we've got to remember to just be patient and keep taking those steps, and keep it's kind of holding on to your why. When you have a big enough reason why you're doing something, that is so often, well, that is the thing that keeps you going. If you don't really know why you're doing something, you're not going to stick to it. But if you do know why you're doing something, it makes it a lot easier when it's hard to keep connecting back to why you're doing it. So that's what I do with the podcast. I constantly connect back to, you know, what is my why here? And I know it so clearly that it keeps me going. So I just think it's really important to be patient, because the great things in life, they do take time for anyone. And we just don't see the reps that people are putting in. And it's so, you know, I think when it comes to goals, it's so much about those reps. You've got to put those reps in over and over and over and over again. You know, and then if you do that and you have the belief, you're going to get there, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, you just think, I mean, exercise is such a good example of all of this.
Yeah.
It just, and I suppose with that exercise, I mean, I don't know if what my end. It's funny actually when you think about exercise, because I've done a marathon. That was my goal, and I had a plan. I executed it. I knew I was going to do it, and that was just such a wonderful way to see a goal just come in a relatively short space of time. It was 16 weeks from start to finish, the training plan, to then actually do it, get your medal, and go, yes, I've done it. But exercise in general is something that I do pretty much every day, whatever that might be, whether it's strength training, running, whatever. I will push my body to some extent. Not today, because I felt like I needed to listen to my body. So I did I did some stretching. I just got out of bed and I did some stretching. But I know that I need to move my body every single day for me to make to feel good. And I set myself little interim goals to try and keep me interested. So the marathon was a big goal. I'm trying to think if I've got one at the moment, and I haven't, but I probably will set myself one when I'm moved into my new house and I'm settled. But maybe I might go and do a 10K or something like that. You know, that's things like the park run are so fantastic, and I think so popular, because every week, I used to do it religiously every single week, but every single week you have a goal of, you might be able to beat your PB in 5K. And I think that's the excitement of it. It's like, can I do it? So all the other things you do in the week might be working towards that run. So I think it's, even if you don't have a really massive goal, it's really important to set yourself some little interim goals, just to keep you focused, keep you keep you strong. With me, with strength training, for example, I will set myself little goals in my mind. I don't necessarily write it down. It's a massive goal. I'm going to see today in the session if I can get to that particular weight and see if I can do that. But it just kind of keeps me interested, keep me focused, because ultimately, although we've got to put those reps in, as you say, we've got to keep consistent, but we've also got to make it enjoy. If we could try and add a little bit of enjoyment into the process, obviously that makes it all much more fun and much more enjoyable. So it's about finding ways to do the reps and keep your interest sparked. And that's why also getting support, finding your people, finding your tribe, doing it with some other people, so you're not always on your own doing everything. And I suppose that's why it's so great to go to a group, or go to a gym and you're training together, or you're like your membership Thrive Solo, you're all doing this, you're working together on feeling great about being single and child free. It's about reaching those goals in a way where, sometimes you've got to do it when nobody's watching. You've still got to do the hard thing, and it feels hard, but you need to make sure you've got things in place which is going to support you in those moments when you are on the brink of wanting to throw the towel in and give it all up.
Completely. The research also says about goals that you need something that is two things. Well, there's more than two things, but two things off the top of my head. I should have looked this up before we did this live, but I didn't. But you've got to make it measurable in some way, so that you can actually measure your progress. And that might look like literally having a calendar on the wall where you are ticking something off every day or every couple of days or whatever it is. And what else does the research say? God, I'm an idiot. I should have.
Well, they talk about SMART goals, and now I can't remember what half of them. So small. The S is for small. M is for measurable. The A is achievable, so it needs to be achievable. But I mean, I suppose if you're going for Olympic gold, it's still achievable. You can do it. But but if you were kind of 90 years old and maybe it wouldn't be so achievable if you were going for an Olympic gold. I don't know, but it's got to be achievable. The R is for. Oh, I can't remember what the R and the T are for.
The other one that springs to mind that I've definitely heard talked about in the research to do with goals is it's not only got to be measurable, but you need to, and this sounds really, really obvious, but you've got to work out exactly how you are going to, again, this sounds ridiculously obvious, but you have to work out how you are going to do it. Like, what exactly are the steps? So you've got to know the processes that you are going to take. You've got to know the actual steps that you are going to take every day, or however often it is, whether it's once a week or every day. What were you going to say?
Yes. So I would I would say you need to know your next step. I don't think you need to know every single step, because sometimes the how will reveal itself to you once you've taken your next step. Sometimes I think if you just have your goal, if you have your goal there, and you might not know it, sometimes you don't know how. And I think we can sometimes get very caught up on needing to know the how. Whereas I think actually if you just need to know your next step, and then from that next step, sometimes that is what you need, because then the other steps will become a little bit clearer. Because I think sometimes a lot of us get too caught up on like, how do I do it? And you don't know how, and that's when we can sometimes get a bit stagnant.
No, that's such a good point. And I do think it can actually depend on what your goal is.
Exactly. So exactly.
I mean, I'm thinking about, so like, if you've got, like, say, an exercise goal, that's always like the example, isn't it? But it's just such an easy example to use. So with an exercise goal, you can know more steps. You can kind of make a plan as to what you're going to do. Whereas if it's a goal, like for example, a podcast, I have no idea how things are going to happen. So I think in that case, I couldn't agree more. It's so true that when you just commit to a goal, when you just commit to something that you want to do, and exactly like you say, when you just work out what the next step is, clarity comes from taking action. This is something we've talked about on Monday Motivation before, and it's something I believe so strongly in. Clarity comes with taking action. We don't want to wait until we're clear. We want to take the step, and that is what leads to the clarity. And I've experienced that so many times in the last 4 or 5 years. You know, you got to start messy. You kind of got to start. And again, depending on what kind of goal we're talking about, if it's something like losing weight, then it's more sort of measurable. But if it's something a bit loftier and a bit more kind of, not so specific, then that is when the value is in taking a step. And when you take the first step, like you say, the next step will be revealed. I believe that so much. So much.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, someone like Toby Roberts, bringing it back to him, he knew, and he said in interviews, him and his dad laid out a very detailed plan of how.
Wow.
So he knew he had to go to these competitions in Europe. He knew he had to get to these. So for him, it was very much like the plan was all there. So you're right. So sometimes you have to know the steps if you want to achieve. And I think you're right. Sport is something where you probably do know, you can see how you're going to do it. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is dependent on what your goal is.
But I think the main thing for people who are listening or watching to just sort of remember is that, you know, it really is so important to have something that you're working towards in your life. We all need that. You know, I talk about it in respect of being single or not having kids, and saying how, you know, it's really important for the likes of me to have goals because I'm not in a relationship and I don't have kids, and therefore, you know, you can almost say that it's more necessary to have goals because of my situation in life. But actually, that's not the case. We all need them. We all need direction. We all need something that we're working towards, because actually it makes us happier, when it makes us feel better about our lives when we're working towards something. And again, it can be something like, I'm going to go, you know, it can be a holiday. It can be earning enough money to buy a flight to wherever. So it doesn't have to be something major, but it's really great to have goals that you write down. And that's a big one, isn't it? You mentioned this earlier, like it's really, we have to write them down. And it's really effective to write goals down. If not every day, then maybe every week, just to literally physically write them down is I think you are more like, well, I know from the research, you are more likely to achieve a goal when you write it down. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. No, it's been proven. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're much more likely to write to achieve it. And it's just, and it makes you feel so proud of yourself. It's really good for your confidence, your self-esteem. All of those good feelings come from it. Whereas, you know, it's kind of like gives you that, it just lifts you up. It helps you to grow and expand. And when we're growing and expanding, that's what we're meant to do as human beings. That's what fuels our souls. Yeah. So it's when we're not doing that, and by just drifting and not having goals, that's when you just kind of, nothing's changing, nothing's happening. And and maybe maybe you are someone, you know, some people are very happy just to stay where they are. And if that's the case, then great. But I think a lot of us want to have this real desire just to continue to grow and learn and be the best that we can.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, we've gone 2 minutes over. Shock horror.
Well, thank you for everyone who has watched or is listening on the podcast. And go write your goals down.
And we'll see you back here next Monday. And Polly, best of luck with the move. I hope it goes well.
Yeah,
So when we do Monday Motivation next week, you're going to be sitting in a different house.
I am, I know. It's so exciting.
Oh my God.
All right, love.
Have a good week. Good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Love.
Bye. Bye.